Okay, so now that you have a better understanding of this idea of creating parent-child relationships, you can see that we can create these relationships between objects, between bones when we are dealing with the armature, and we can create parent-child relationships between objects and bones. This is where we were dealing with the eye. So what we're going to do now in this lesson is get quite technical because there's something that I want to show you that has to do with parent-child relationships, and it has to do with establishing them in the 3D view and how it differs when you are establishing them through the Object tab in the Relationships panel. So to understand this, go ahead and click on the figure in the outliner and drag it onto the armature and click on with automatic weights. Now you already know what the routine is here, so I'm just going to click on the Object tab. You can see that the armature has been set as the parent of this figure. Go ahead and click on this figure and now drag it out. So here we've now dropped the parent. We can also create the parent-child relationship by clicking on the figure in the 3D view, pressing the Shift key down and clicking on the armature. It does not matter if it's in pose mode or object mode. Now do Control P and click on Object. Notice that the same thing just occurred. Now if you click on the figure, you can see that the parent has been set again as armature. Go ahead and click on the figure and drag it out to drop the parent. Now go and click on the armature and now zoom out, do Shift middle mouse button to bring it up, and now click on this red arrow and take it to the left. Of course, the figure is not going to move with the armature because it is not the child of the armature. Now click on this figure. If you come in over here and set the armature as the parent, the figure snaps to the armature. Go ahead and X this out. But if we do this in the 3D view, the figure is not going to snap to where the armature is. Click on the figure, press the Shift key down, now click on the armature, do Control P, and click on Object. Notice how this is different. So when you are creating parent-child relationships in the 3D view, the offset between both objects is kept intact. So go ahead and zoom in, Shift middle mouse button. Notice that the origin point for the figure and the origin point for the armature, there is a relationship line showing over here, meaning that the distance is being kept when we created this relationship. Now if you click on the figure and now go to the Object tab, and over here you simply have to click on Object and just reselect it again. Notice that the figure snaps to where the armature is. So we're going to understand how this is working in Blender. So it's obvious that there is a difference when you create the parent-child relationships in the 3D view and when you create them using the Object tab and the Relations panel. Go ahead under File, do New, and then do Reload Startup File. Click on the camera, press the Shift key down and click on the lamp, X and delete. Go ahead and click on the cube and open up this panel over here. Now, the first thing that you should know is that the location, rotation, and scale that is being shown over here is for the currently active object, meaning that if we click on the Object tab, it is this information that Blender is giving you access to where the 3D view is. It just makes it easier. So you can be switched on different tabs and still look at this information. Now go ahead and press the 1 key to go to the front view and press the 5 key to go into ortho and go ahead and zoom in. Now what's important to understand here is that every object that's going to come inside the Blender, inside your 3D view, will always come at the center of the grid. So if you do the middle mouse button over here, you can see that the object has been placed in the center of the grid. Now notice this. When we click on this red arrow and move this object to the left, here Blender is showing you that where your object is inside the 3D scene at a -2 x-axis. If you click on the green arrow or the blue arrow, here you can see what Blender is showing you how much your object has moved from where its starting position was, where it was at the center of the 3D grid. If you click the 3D cursor over here, press Shift A and add, let's say, a UV sphere, you'll notice that it tells you how it placed the sphere inside your 3D view by first placing it here where it was at the center of the 3D grid, then it moved it to where the 3D cursor is. Go ahead, X, and delete this sphere. Now, if you click on this object and switch to edit mode and make sure that all the vertices are selected, you can do A to select everything. X and delete the vertices. Go ahead and now click on object mode. Notice that we can still access the object, meaning that the vertices that define what this object looks like is a separate concept. And you can see this by clicking this open and looking at its data block. The vertices, faces, and edges that define what your 3D model looks like are kept in this data block. You can actually click on this tab to see the name of it here. So the data block is simply a link to this object. So when you are dealing with objects inside Blender, when you do Shift A, all of these are objects. And all of these objects are going to have this origin point. So this means that if we click on this red arrow, green arrow, and blue arrow, you can see that all we're really doing is moving the origin point. Now, if we press the R key 2 times, you can see that we can actually rotate. But of course, we're not going to see anything rotating. It's simply rotating the origin. And you can see that the numbers are changing here. And if we press the S key to scale and left click, you can see that we just changed the scale values. So what this tells you is that the vertices are simply attached to the origin. They know their distance from the origin. So when we scale an object, the vertices are simply using this value as a multiplier. Now the default value is always at 1. So if you click your mouse and drag it down, press 1, it's always at 1 as the starting point, because 1 times 1 is just 1. 1 times any number is going to be its same value, right? So when you add the vertices, when you are building your object, it's always going to be at this value. Only when you scale it that the vertices will start to move away from the origin point. It's the same thing with the rotation. Since the vertices are attached to the origin, they know how to rotate. Wherever the origin rotates, the vertices are going to follow. When you move the origin in its location values, the vertices are going to follow. We can X and delete this. Do Shift A and add the cube. Now notice that when we are moving this cube, we're actually moving the origin point and the vertices are simply following this object. Okay? Now notice these dimensions over here. This is simply showing you how much space the vertices are taking. So if we move this object over here and press the tab key to go into edit mode, having all the vertices selected, click on this red arrow and move it away from its origin point, go back into object mode, you'll see that the dimensions still stay the same. Because over here, it's just going to accumulate how much space are all the vertices together taking to describe its dimension. So if you go into edit mode and click on this vertex over here, X, and delete the vertices, click over here, X, and delete this, we only have these two vertices and an edge left. So when you click on object mode, you can see now, right now it's just showing that the dimensions is only showing up on its y-axis. Okay, this is the first concept to understand about this, X and delete. Now do Shift C to place the 3D cursor in the center, do Shift A and now add the cube. Press the 1 key to go to the front view. So now when we click on this red arrow to move this object right over here, here's Blender is telling you that this is how much you have moved your object from its starting location. Now if you press the R key 2 times, press the S key to scale, since Blender knows exactly what you did to your object, you can reset everything back by selecting Alt-R-G-S, meaning that we are resetting the rotation, location, and the scale. Okay, now go ahead and move this object over here. So now you know how this concept is working in the 3D view when you're dealing with objects. Now do Shift A and add a UV sphere. Notice that it's going to do the same thing, right? It's just going to behave like this object. So go ahead and click on this red arrow and now bring it down over here. Now, we're going to click on this sphere, press the Shift key down, click on this cube over here, and do Control P and click on Object. Notice you see this relationship line going between these two origin points. So the sphere is the child of this cube. Okay, so when you press the R key to rotate the cube, the child will follow. Right click to cancel. When you press the S key to scale, the child will scale. Right click to cancel. When you press the G key to move, the child will follow. Right click to cancel. Okay, so when you are creating the parent-child relationships inside the 3D view, the location, rotation, and scale are kept intact when the relationship is being created between the child and the parent. Now, if you click on this sphere, press the 1 key to go to your front view. Now click on the Object tab over here. Go ahead and click this and just set it to Object again. Notice that the sphere moved to the left. So what's happening here is that when we create the parent-child relations over here, the child will treat the parent as the center of the 3D grid. So this is why it's moving, meaning that if we click on this child, press the Shift key down, and now click on this cube, basically if we take this cube's origin point and put it to the center over here, you'll notice that it's moving the child exactly where it started out from, right? So if we do Control Z to undo all this, you'll notice that the child goes back to where it was. This is what this is doing over here. Okay, so when you select this, this is why this thing moved. Go ahead and X this out. Now if you do it the other way, if you select the cube first because you want it to be the child, press the Shift key down, click on the sphere, do Control P and select Object, you'll see that the same thing is going on over here. Now if we click on the cube should end up over here. Imagine that this is the center of the 3D grid. So if we click over here and click on Object, you'll notice that it moves. Press the Shift key down and click on the sphere. Now you're going to move this origin point to the center over here by pressing the G key and just move it like that. See how this is behaving? So when you're using this, this is what it's doing. But when you do it inside the 3D view, it keeps the offset intact. Go ahead and do Control Z to put everything back the way it was. Now what I want to show you over here is that when the parent-child relationship is being created, right, the child retains its rotation and scale, right, when you're establishing the connection. Now notice that if we click on this object, which is right now the parent, press the R key 2 times to rotate this, we can rotate the parent any way that we want, right? So you've seen this before. Now go ahead and click on this and X this out. Now go ahead and click on the parent, press the R key to rotate anywhere you want, press the S key to scale. Now we don't have to do the G key to move because we've already moved it. Now click on this cube, press the Shift key down and click on the sphere. Do Control P and click on Object. Notice that the relationship has been established and the child retains its rotation and scale and location, right? Now notice what's going to happen over here. I'm going to switch this to local over here. Now when you click over here and go ahead and select object, notice that the child is now taking on the rotation and scale of its parent. You see how this is working now? When you click it, it's not going to show this, right? It's not supposed to, because when you X this out, it's just going to move back the way it is. Okay, so that's actually what's happening here. So when we do Shift key down and click on this to Control P, the offset is kept at all times. But if we click over here and do it from this menu item over here, it's going to go back. I'm going to Control Z that. So if you X this out and now just click on the sphere, it'll do the same thing. Okay, so that's what's going on. So that means that if we go back to our original file and now drag the figure onto the armature and do with automatic weights, then drag this out over here. And now click on the armature, switch to object mode, zoom out, do Shift middle mouse button over here and move it to the left. Now click over here, and now when we go to the object tab and click on armature, now you understand what's happening. This is the same thing. So now if we click on the armature, which is the parent, and move its origin point to the center of the 3D grid, you can see why the figure was moving when we had done it this way. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you first as to how this works. So I'm going to see you in the next lesson where we're going to take a look at this concept when we're dealing with bounds, how it differs. Thank you.